Hello and welcome back to JimMurphyMP.com, where we're keeping in touch with local and national news. I'm here in Giffnock, outside Melbourne Court. I've been in meeting Mr. and Mrs. Smith. I'm presenting Mr. Smith with his veterans badge and listening to his experiences having served in the British Army. And I mention that just really to encourage any older viewers, or perhaps if your father or grandfather served in the British Army and they haven't received this veterans badge, please do get in touch and we can arrange to try and get that from the Ministry of Defence and present it in a local event, or just pop round to the house to take it round to them. Of course, beyond that, the big news internationally continues to be Syria and the humanitarian crisis, but again, closer to home, the referendum campaign is starting to gather a bit more energy. There's been a lot of debate over the last few weeks, and I reflected over the past few days that two things. Firstly, that this isn't a referendum about whether you like David Cameron's government or not. It's much more important than that. Scotland's going to have two referendums. It's going to have one in 2015 about whether we want to keep a Tory government, and we've got to work hard to get Mr. Cameron and Mr. Clegg out. But we've also got a referendum this year, and it's much more important than a change of government. You can change every government at every election. You don't like what they're doing, you can get rid of them. But a referendum and independence, if we're to go independent, is forever. David Cameron and his government are temporary. Independence is forever. So let's have an enormous debate about the significance of this vote, because it's the biggest decision we'll ever take. And as part of that, the SNP have to come up with some answers. I've got a poll on the website now about which currency should an independent Scotland use, because it's very unlikely that they would be allowed to use the pound. But asking those sorts of questions isn't negative. If they can't answer what currency an independent Scotland would be using, how can we believe any of the other answers? So we're just going to keep asking for much more detail. And they'll say, oh, you don't believe in Scotland, and they'll say it's negative. There's nothing negative about asking those easy questions, let alone the hard ones. In our country, and actually Mrs. Smith that I just met said this to me, is that Scotland helped make Britain great in the first place. But our country did all that because we always asked why and how, whether it was during the Enlightenment or whether it's through the period of inventions and the great things Scotland has given to the world. We've always asked why and how. It's a Scottish way of doing things, and we'll ask the SNP throughout this, why, how would that work? And it's for them to come up with the answers, and yet at the moment they're not. That's all for just now. Get in touch in the usual way by Facebook, on the blog, through email, coming along to one of the surgeries, or doing the usual thing as I say. Go to a post office, buy a stamp, stick it in an envelope and post it off to me at the House of Commons. Cheers just now.